right. Hello. Hi. This is the overview for environmental science. I recently updated this one to put in some very recent events because they deserve to go on the timeline overview. Later in the semester, we're also going to do a natural disasters and how humans make them worse. That has a whole lot more added to it. And I am presently working on updating my current topics. But this is a good place to start since this is the first week. Thought you might want an overview of what's been going on in environmental science. First, we have Thomas Malthus, 1798. This is the gentleman who predicted that the exponential population growth of humanity is going to outpace the linear food production. What this means is that we keep having more and more people born, so exponential just keeps on rising. Linear food production means there's only so much space to grow the food, so the gap is going to get larger and larger, which leads to starvation. This guy saw this issue back in 1798. Pointing this out because, holy crap, yeah. Henry David Thoreau wrote the book Walden, or Life in the Woods. Pretty much just a way of saying, hey, look how beautiful the planet is, and maybe we should try to be a little self-sufficient. You know, don't take more than we can replace. Don't be wasteful, that kind of thing. Yellowstone National Park in 1872. This was the very first national park created, which is pretty cool. I have yet to go. It's on my list. Once all this stuff's done and I am able to save up a little bit of funds, I really want to do a road trip to all the different big time national parks. Can't do all of them because holy crap, there's a lot of national parks. But this one, top of the list. London fog. Here's where it starts to get a little crazy and you see more of what I tend to focus on. There's different ways of talking about environmental science. There's the environmental scientist way, which is very clinical and, you know, numbers, the science aspect, which is very important in order to actually fix or address or change a whole bunch of different things. I tend to come at it more of the environmentalist way, which is heart. And in order to do that, I have to get you to see why certain things are issues. So I am going to put a face on so many things throughout the semester. The first one here is going to be London fog in 1880. Remember London fog, because later we will talk about London smog, which is similar but different. So anyway, coal burning, toxic fog came over London. It's they have this weather pattern where it's kind of like putting a lid on top of the place and it traps it so it's not getting out. So what happened here is about 11,776 people died within 3 days because of this toxic fog. That's insane. Now, the big picture over here, clearly that's not from 1880. The one in the corner, though, that one is supposed to be from 1880. I have the big picture there more to give you an idea on how much fog can actually be there. Sierra Club in 1892. This dude founded the Sierra Club basically to remind people how great nature is, saying, here you go, let's protect nature so you can check it out. That kind of thing. Then we have the Lacey Act of 1900. It started off basically just saying that you cannot kill birds without paying the state. So there was a tax. This way they could try to limit the number of birds you're killing because humanity kind of made a bunch of birds go extinct by overkilling them. Then they have continued to update and amend the Lacey Act to add more and more items to it. And so I have a list there. Theodore Roosevelt, he was a president of the United States. He was the first environmental president, and he started the golden age of conservation, which is pretty admirable. Pelican Island, 1903. This is the very first national wildlife refugee. So this is in Florida, and it was an area where they said, holy crap, we probably should protect an area full of nesting birds. And there you go, Pelican Island, became our first national wildlife refuge. Then we have the Forest Service. SCIE believe the forests, we should use them, however, not overuse them. So we should protect them for future generations. This way we can kind of say, you can take these, but not these. You have to plant in order to harvest, that kind of thing, because he realized way back in 1905 that we were just taking more than we were replacing and we were going to run out. So kind of a big deal. Dust Bowl. Everybody should have covered this in a history class. The reason I use this one is, let's get my little laser pointer here. There we go. So this picture right here is of the Dust Bowl. All this dust coming in, it was from basically a drought and over harvesting, over farming, so it stripped a lot of the stuff from the soil, so then when the wind came through, it all blew like crazy. Now, this is what I find really interesting. This is where the Dust Bowl took place, but it was so massive that some of the dirt and the dust from this area was located way over here. That is a serious friggin' dust storm. And if you check out the news and keep track of a bunch of stuff, you will find out that we still have all these dust storms happening. One of them actually just happened in, I think it was the end of June of this year. You might have heard on the news that it was coming across the ocean. There was still enough of it that in Florida you could see it. And that's a pretty big dust storm. Okay, Donora, Pennsylvania, 1948. This was the first major air quality disaster. So remember where I said a moment ago about how there's certain types of weather patterns? It works like putting a lid, trapping everything underneath it. Here's one of the examples. Trapped the toxic fumes, moved into the city to kill 20 people and made over 7,000 ill. And I know you're saying 20 people dead, and that's not a whole huge number. But it kind of is in a small town when all you did was breathe. That's pretty bad. And 7,000 ill. Enough there that in Donora, Pennsylvania, they actually still have a sign reminding people about it, trying to help you remember, stop, take care of your stuff, that kind of thing. There you go. Oh, I love this book. The Sand County Almanac, 1949. I have read this book multiple times. I highly recommend it. It's basically like a love story to the land. It is a man basically describing nature, and you cannot help but realize how much he cares for the land, and so pointing out that you need to treat the land properly, treat it ethically, care for it, don't just misuse it, don't just, do whatever. Actually listen to the land and treat it properly. Here's that London smog I was talking about, 1952. Coal burning, producing smoke, just like in London fog. Then we have that unusual weather pattern that traps the toxic smoke, brought it into the city, killing thousands. Okay, here's the weird thing. I am a visual person. So I did some conversions here. On this one, the largest elephant is around 4,400 pounds. 1 ton equals 2,204.6 pounds. So during this time period, I'm going to compare things by number of elephants. So as I read this, as you hear it, imagine elephants, okay? So we have about 4,000 dead due to the fog. The pollution smoke was so toxic that they reported cows choking to death in fields. So the cows are just standing there being cows, doing their little cow business, and then they just keel over, fall over dead because, they were breathing. How dare they? The smoke was so thick that people could not see their feet. These are not like 12-foot tall people. These are like, between 5 and 6 feet. Imagine looking down and the smog being so thick you can't see your own feet. That's pretty friggin' bad. All right, so now we had about 500 elephants worth of smoke particles. We had 1,000 elephants worth of carbon dioxide, 205 elephants worth of hydrochloric acid, 7 elephants worth of fluorine compounds, and then, because this is how chemistry works, about 185 elephants worth of sulfur dioxide, which then converted to 400 elephants worth of sulfuric acid. Let that sink in. People were coated and breathing in sulfuric acid and hydrochloric acid. No wonder so many people died, right? Again, just for breathing. Then we have Minamata, Japan. I am going to try to keep this as quick as possible because I totally cover this later in the semester in more depth. So here we go. Company dumping mercury into a nearby bay, which was Minamata Bay, and then later decided to let it go into the river because they were getting caught for dumping it all into the bay. And so this contamination just kept on spreading. This are images of a lot of the children who were born with special needs, a lot of birth defects, because they were born during all of this. What they were dumping was mercury. Mercury, very horrible. Again, long story for Minamata. We'll come back to it, I promise. Then we have Silent Spring, 1962. This was a book by Rachel Carson. I guarantee your textbook will mention this one, without a doubt, because this is huge. There's a pesticide called DDT, and it's been pretty much taken off the market. It's very bad, very toxic, but there are still some developing countries that will still use it because it works very well at killing insects. The issue is it doesn't only kill the insects. Then the birds who are eating it ended up ingesting it. It would thin the shells of their offspring. And the reason she titled this Silent Spring is she pointed out how strange and how disturbing it would be if in the spring when you woke up, it was completely silent. You didn't hear the crickets chirping, you didn't hear the birds chirping, you didn't hear any of those sounds that you associate with spring. And pointed out that by spraying all these pesticides and all these other things, that what we were doing was basically killing nature. And so she was pointing out we kind of need to take note. Pollution of Lake Erie. Holy shnikes, you know it has to be bad if friggin' Dr. Seuss mentions it in his book. So this right here is the quote from the Lorax. I hear things are just as bad up in Lake Erie. Massive, massive overpollution. There you go. Population Bomb, 1968. This was a book that came out pointing out just how many people we have that are starving, pretty much. Too many people, not enough resources. This is what leads to famine. This is all the way back to the beginning of this timeline with Thomas Malthus. People, exponential rate. Food, linear. Tragedy of the Commons, also 1968. This is pointing out that, you have some people that have everything, and then you have all these people who have to share this little bit. Tragedy of the Commons, it's the common folk that are suffering, pretty much. So some people greedy, act selfishly, unfairly. Meanwhile, the others are starving. Could go on, but then I'm way stepping out of the environmental science aspect. But trust me, you'll know my opinion by the end of the semester of all this anyway. Okay, we've got this river fire. I swear, I have tried to say this name properly. I cannot tell you how many times I butcher it. It's horrible. But anyway, in 1969, a river caught fire. Let that sink in. A river caught fire. And if you Google it, you'll see it's happened more than once. And some of the pictures are absolutely gorgeous. But it's still a bad thing. It's so polluted. The amount of crap in there, the amount of flammable liquid and whatnot in the water made it where it could burn. Then we have our National Environmental Policy Act, otherwise known as NEPA, 1969. We have continued to add more and more things underneath this umbrella. Stuff is getting added all the time, and in our current administration, some of the stuff is getting sucked back out. But at the moment, I believe all of this is still under there. Clean Air Act of 1970, it took this long for someone to go, you know what, maybe we want to keep our air a little clean. Our air is still not clean, and it has been taxed a whole lot recently. Taxed, I don't mean financially, I mean stressed. During the pandemic, it seemed like things were clearing up for a bit, but then a lot of other stuff happened. I'm going to leave it at that because I just realized I think I asked you about it in like a week or two. So, EPA established in 1970. The entire purpose of the EPA was seriously to protect the environment. I have no doubt they're still trying, or some people are still trying to keep the EPA what it was originally established for, but there's a lot of issues there too because there is politics involved. My personal opinion is I think the EPA should still put the environment first and not just make other people happy. But then again, that's just me. Okay, first Earth Day, 1970. This is one of my favorites, but also one of my most frustrating ones. April 22nd was a Wednesday. This was on purpose. The whole thing was designed to show a massive amount of support for how we need to take care of the Earth. It was designed to disrupt everything. It was a massive walkout. Everybody was supposed to get up and walk out of their jobs, out of school, out of everything to show like one huge hippie movement, basically. We were all supposed to go out and say, we support the planet, we demand a change, we care for this Earth. And now if you take a look at it, they normally do things for it on the closest Saturday to the actual date so as not to, disrupt any schedules. I have a problem with that, like a big problem with that. But yeah. Clean Water Act 1972. How about that? Now they're wanting some clean water. I updated down here at the bottom just so you know. Let's see. June 1st of this year, 2020, the administration published a rule that weakens the clean water protections in an effort to fast-track oil and gas pipelines. Yeah, just so you know. It's a little disturbing that the oil and gas pipelines are more important than clean water. I highly recommend keeping an eye out on this kind of thing because hopefully you've heard of Flint, Michigan and a few other locations, but this is very, very disturbing. OPEC oil embargo 1973. Stopped shipping the U.S. oil, caused a huge major issue. I used to think this giant line of cars right here, here's the end, and it comes around, and then it went all the way around here, and then up here. This was all just to get gas. This was huge. I used to think that was a huge line, but now if you follow the news and you see how huge some of the lines are just to get a test for COVID, this line doesn't seem as long to me now. Love Canal of 1978. I swear you cannot make this stuff up. The Love Canal, the landfill for the Hooker Chemical Company, and made people die. What happened is there was a group that was going to make a subdivision, and they called it the Love Canal because they were going to actually try to run power with water. So trying to make a more environmental friendly place. Different way to do electricity and that kind of thing. Well, they ran out of funding or whatever, and they never finished actually making the canal, but they had dug a bunch out. They sold it to the Hooker Chemical Company, who then decided to bury their waste there. They buried the waste, plowed over it, and then built houses and sold the houses. Well, they all started getting contaminated, and a lot of people died, birth defects, this and that. Still going on. You can actually look this up. You will see that they will swear that everything is fine now, but they have done this more than once, and then they move people back in, and then stuff starts popping up, you have a higher rate of cancer and all these other different things all around there. Yeah. Normally in an in-person class when we're talking about this, I then encourage people to look at the socioeconomic end of this and who would have been living there. And honestly, if you buy a house in a location because it's the only place you can afford it, and then it turns out to be a toxic place, what are you going to do? It's not like anyone else is going to buy the house. And it really just kind of, I don't know, breaks your heart and should make you mad. 3 Mile Island, 1979, located in Pennsylvania. This was the worst nuclear disaster of all time. This is a picture showing you the whole thing going down. Oh, India, 1984, worst industrial disaster. There was a pesticide gas leak. Gases dropped down due to the weather, killed thousands of people, killed about 3,800, and then caused sickness, disability, and premature death for many thousand more. This is an image of mostly the dead. I mean, you can see a standing person here, but this, it's a lot. And again, these people died because they were just breathing. Chernobyl, 1986. Holy crap, this is a huge one. Reactor 4 exploded. Here you go. This is where it used to belong. And became the world's worst nuclear explosion. Check out these birth defects from the people in the general area. I mean, honestly, this is the one I can never get past right here. And yes, there have been movies about this. No, most of them are not real. The one on Sci-Fi, I call it SCIE, is not accurate. It's, yeah. Now, an interesting thing, and I can't remember if I still share this article with the class or not, but there is still damage in the area. You look at the photographs, the area for Chernobyl looks gorgeous. However, nothing rots. Everything in the soil that's like a decomposer is gone. You can take leaf litter from another area and put it there and it does not decompose. That is worrisome. That shows that it's still not a healthy place. You can't say, well, it looks good. You have to understand all of it needs to work. And right now, still, it doesn't. Montreal Protocol, 1987. This treaty was designed to protect the ozone layer. The ozone is what's helping to protect us from the sun. The sun is a huge ball of radiation. You can track the rates of skin cancer that have increased as the hole has gotten larger. So here, this is showing you it beginning in 1979, and then in 2008, it was all the way here. But this I have added because this is really friggin' cool. March 26th, 2020. By the way, that's my birthday. Well, I wasn't born in 2020, obviously, but March 26th is my birthday. You see this hole right here, April 26th, a month of humanity having a lockdown. Look, it's gone. I thought that was really cool. And as scary as the coronavirus and COVID-19 is, as inconvenient and frustrating as the lockdowns and the pandemic have been, oh my gosh, it did my heart some good, because when we removed the complete and utter selfishness of humanity and everyone had to lock down for a while, the earth got to take this huge collective sigh, and you can see that things started to heal. And up until that moment, I didn't know if it could. I've been fighting for it, and I have been trying to educate people on it, and I have just been bullheaded about it. But this showed me that it is possible for this planet to heal. So, yay. Exxon Valdez. Oh my gosh, does this one always still make me mad. To this day, I won't go to Exxon because I'm still mad. 1989. Oh my gosh, it was a horrible disaster. We cover this in depth when we cover oil spills. I really need to fix this, where it says spread over 500 miles, and then I say from here to Key Largo, Florida, or North Carolina. I put this part in when I was teaching this class in Valdosta, Georgia. I'm in Atlanta now, so it's not quite the same thing. But 500 miles is 500 miles, so that is a huge amount of coast. Kyoto Protocol, 1997. Treaty to stabilize the greenhouse gases. This way, they were trying to stop global warming. They have discovered it is not possible to stop global warming anymore. Now they just say, try to curb global warming because we went past the point of no return. We're just trying to bring it down a touch. So, down here, I've got my update as of April 2020. 192 parties have ratified the protocol. Basically, they're trying really hard to make it stop. The United States has not. The U.S. dropped out in 2001. Basically, the U.S. is like, we want to keep doing what we want to do. This is not a good thing because we are one of the number one contributors for the gases. So if you look at all of the nations, U.S. is number one. Yes, this one is a slightly older chart. This one's a couple of years old. But the U.S., every chart I have ever seen, we have always still been number one. China, always right behind us. We are very, very air polluting. Deepwater Horizon 2010. Everybody should remember this one. This was the BP oil spill. Again, we cover this one in depth when we cover the oil spills. I also still will not utilize BP. I won't give them even 1 penny of my money. Won't do it. I'm still mad. Where I said that I go for the heart, that's why I have these pictures here, is I want your heart. I want you to feel it. These poor little animals, they didn't do anything. They were just living, and then they got coated in oil. And this is what crude oil looks like right here. It's not like what you pour out of the can to put into your car. This is the crude oil. All this is not mud. This is crude oil. It's horrible. Fukushima, Japan, 2011. Cover this one later more fully. If you like disaster movies, Fukushima, Japan was like the Mac Daddy of disaster movies because you had an earthquake underneath the ocean, which then caused a tsunami, which is a tidal wave, which then slammed into a nuclear reactor. So you have 3 major disasters right on top of each other. It's horrid. Ebola, 2014 to 2016. It's a very terrifying disease. And a lot of you should probably remember this because people were totally freaking out. And when it was escalating, people were like, oh my gosh, lock the borders, don't let anybody in. And there were a lot of people who were trying to keep the Doctors Without Borders, who were Americans, from coming back home because they were so terrified of Ebola. Granted, Ebola is terrifying because it pretty much liquefies your organs. But there you go. So, I want you to notice this part right here. The United States, we had 3 cases and 1 death. We might have ended up with a few more cases than that, but nothing really huge. But you still had notices everywhere, all the doctors' offices. Have you been to these countries? Have you done this? Have you done that? Similar to what we see now, but there weren't nearly as many cases or deaths. 2018, just 2 years ago, the last male white rhino dies for the northern white rhino. There are other types, but the northern white rhino is now completely considered extinct because this was the last male. With no male, you can't have them. we will cover this pretty soon when we talk about animal extinctions and stuff like that too. Australian wildfires. This was last year to the beginning of this year. There have been a lot of wildfires, and I cover these in the natural disasters and how humans make them worse. Cover a lot more of this. But if you look at 2018, Colorado, 475,000 acres burned. California in 2018, 1,800,000 acres burned. Australia, 15,600,000 acres burnt. This was disturbing. If you were like any normal human being, you were seeing this all over the news in December and January and February going, oh my gosh, because area upon area upon area, you have firefighters who are trying to rescue the wildlife. You see the ones who are giving water bottles to koalas and they're drinking it. Lots of species, they believe, were probably made extinct due to these wildfires, but it's going to take a while to know for sure how much was lost, because so much was lost. Right now, Arctic heat wave. The Arctic is literally on fire. Like as I make this PowerPoint, as I make this presentation, the Arctic is on fire. Let that sink in. Yeah. And then, of course, we've got the coronavirus. We know this is happening. I thought it handy to throw this little bitty timeline here. Right here, January 20th, we had this cluster of cases right here. We had 4 countries impacted. February 15th, 28 countries impacted. The U.S. was already impacted. It was mostly right along this coast and a couple of little spots in between, but as I'm sure everybody remembers, I was like, oh, it's not us. We're fine. We're fine. March 1st, 66 countries. As of March 20th, 165 countries. As of now, I think there's only like a couple countries that are not impacted. I was holding out for Belize because I have friends in Belize, and I was like obsessively watching it, and they had no cases for the longest time. Then they had 1. Then they had 2. They were capped at 48 cases for quite a while, but now they have started hitting the hundreds, which might not mean much since our country is over 5 million at this point. They're a little country and they're trying so hard and they're poor, and it bothers me. But here you go. I updated this map today, the day I am doing this presentation, because I wanted to show you for the state of Georgia. This is how we're doing. I have Gwinnett County highlighted because this is my county. So, there you go. Here is where we stand right now for my county, just one county in the state of Georgia. Now, do you remember when we were all freaking out about Ebola and how few cases there were? Yeah, we bypassed that a long friggin' time ago for this one. So, that is pretty much the timeline overview of the class. We're going to be covering some of these in more depth. Some we're just going to like, gloss over. My kids feel like I'm just basically a hippie. I'm not going to argue too much because I am a major just tree lover. But the world, I love the world. I love nature. I love all of it. And I do this class and I do a lot of these presentations, and I'm trying to do more of the videos because I am trying to open other people's eyes, and I want other people to realize how wonderful the place is and stop just closing their eyes and trying to ignore what's going on, but actually recognize it, open your eyes, and try to make a change. My entire goal is always to have at least 1 or 2 people in every one of my classes have that big aha moment and decide I have to do something, because my idea is if I can infect at least 2 other people to make a change, and then those 2 people infect 2 other people, and so on and so on. Eventually, we're all going to bind together and we're going to make a better world. And that makes me happy. So there you go. Now, I do this randomly because some of these are very disturbing. So here's a kitty. This one just cracks me up. And I've kept it here because I first used it because I thought it was funny. And now this right here takes on a whole new meaning. So there you go. There we go. Do we have time throughout this semester? I'm hoping to cover every single one of these, just so you know. That is it. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the overview. Feel free to shoot me a message. Let me know what you think. No, you're not being quizzed on it, but I'm trying to make sure to put the science-y stuff for the class, but then also more of the heart stuff here, so you can get more of the in-person type class that I would like to be able to do, but since I don't live anywhere near the campus, this will have to do. So I guess that's it. Till later. I swear to God, I was about to go peace out. And then I guess I kind of did. So whatever. All right. Bye.